So greetings. This is Gillie Priest of Gillie Priest Revolutionary Radio. And today I want to touch upon a reasoning on Rastafari. The thing is, let me preface this by saying is this. I'm on a deal with the Rastafari movement for decades, from juvenile days. But I've consistently tried not to centralize myself and to centralize my existence exclusively within the movement. Basically, I don't want to be pigeonholed into any particular mental preoccupation. So today I want to touch briefly upon the Rastafari movement, just because to add some clarity to the development of the movement, my perspective on the movement, where I believe I'm seeing the movement is headed to, and where I believe within my own limited understanding where the movement should basically be directed and evolve. Now let me also preface this by saying every individual comes to the movement at their own time and place and pace. So I do not expect everyone to be within the movement at the same time or to be at the same position at any given time. Because right now, man a trod Babylon, and man a trod Babylon through various stages of struggle and tribulation. So as the struggle and the trials and the tribulation, man endure it on a daily basis. Man when come to a certain level of conscious overstanding at the own time and place. And we should also bear in mind that the movement does not require everyone to be at the same place at the same time in order for the movement to move forward. No, it don't require that either. The movement of Rastafari is about liberation. Anything else other than liberation is nothing more than a distraction. Totally, nothing more than a distraction. And when you look at the conception of the movement, this conception takes place within different dispensation, meaning at different time, at different era, triggered under different circumstances, but always to serve the same purpose, to free man from restriction and to free man from bondage, mentally, physically, and spiritually. That is what the movement is about. That is what it is supposed to be about. But in order for us to attain this liberation, another relative terms, because what one man consider liberation, the next man may consider a form of captivity. So, we're speaking in the relative terms, and each individual can apply to their own overstanding, just for this reasoning of what how expansive or how restrictive they may want to perceive freedom, liberation. So we're going to start the reasoning by looking at the brain. And I always love to start this reason at looking at the brain, because the brain is that organ which envelopes the entire universe. There is nothing that is in the universe that is not in the brain. And all conception has to come from the brain through the process of the mind. So we're going to start right there. And we're not going to get into the biological aspect of the brain like I did in another reason. We're going to just delve into more the process of the mind and the development or the restriction of the mind. Because all other concepts that we may be able to develop of what freedom and liberation is, it starts within the capacity of the mind. A process of the biological brain. So that's how we are going to start. And we're going to use some simplified terms so the reasoning don't get too complicated. Yet we're going to maintain a reasoning of depth and width. We're not going to restrict the depth to which the reasoning can go, nor to the width to where it can go. But we're going to use simplified terms because there's a power in simplicity. You know? We always have this misconception through Babylon education that to achieve depth and width, we need complication. We don't need complication to achieve depth and width. The more simplified we can make something to be perceived by others is the better you can attain depth and width, both in the speaker's mind and that of the mind of the listener. If each and every one of us should ask ourselves, can I come up with an independent idea, an independent thought, right at this very moment, that is not an appendage to what we have been taught by others? Can you come up with an idea that is free from appendages of the ideas of others? For most of us, that is almost impossible to do. And therefore, just by making that simple acknowledgement that it is almost impossible for us to come up and generate a new idea that is not an appendage to some other concept that we were taught about or we overheard, it tells you how much our mind is already captive to the ideas of others. If we take terms, simple terms that we tend to banter around every day: love, hate, freedom, liberty, justice, what is mine, what is yours, all these concepts were bequeathed to us either by our ancestors or by external influence. And I'm going to tell you a story that can better exemplify the point I'm trying to make. According to this story, 3 Africans were sitting by the shores of the ocean, and they saw a ship coming. And when they looked closely, they saw some different characteristics people on the ship. And one of the Africans on the shore said, "Let us attack the ship, kill all these strange looking people coming ashore, and get rid of them." But another guy says, "No. By the mere fact that they look different, let us welcome them and see what they're about." They then turned to the third party and said, "What do you have to say?" He said, "I have nothing to say, I'm just listening." So the ship came in. Some Europeans came off the ship, dressed in the latest European refinery. These Africans were sitting in their traditional clothing. So one of the guys stepped off the ship and he greeted the Africans. He said, "Well, I'm from a land, name of Portugal. I'm from Portugal and I'm referred to as a Portuguese. And I'd like to invite you Africans to come with me to the land of my birth, where I can show you where my people has achieved the highest state of civilization. All 3 of you are welcome to come aboard." 2 of the Africans said, "Nah, we are not curious enough to see the way your people live. We are satisfied with the way we are living. one of the Africans said, I'm curious. I'm going to travel to this faraway land and see what splendid these men speak of. So he went aboard with them and they left. And he spent many years in Europe. Then one day, as the two Africans that didn't accompany him sat on the shore, they saw the same ship coming back. And he saw the Europeans stepped off, but in front of the Europeans were the long brethren that left long ago. And he was dressed in the fine refineries of his companions. His friends were glad to see him, so they greeted him. Come on, let's drink. Let's drink some cola nut juice, the traditional juice, to celebrate your coming home. Almost a story equivalent to the prodigal son in the scripture. And he said, no, the African that spent time in Portugal said, no, I cannot drink that primitive. My palate is now restricted to the wines of Portugal and Lisbon. So while his brethren drank the cola nut juice, he was sipping champagne with the fellow guys. Now, the two fellow Africans that didn't travel, they saw something strange with him. So they asked him, they said, let us eat some of our food to welcome you home, since you will not drink with us. The newly arrived Africans said, no, I cannot eat that. It is not seasoned enough to my palate likings. So he summoned other companions of the ship, and he was eating the latest cuisine that the Portuguese had to offer at the time, while his two African former companions ate their local food. They offered him music, he refused. They offered him to let their commune in prayer with the ancestors are. That was repellent to him, because he has now found a new God. He has found the God of the Portuguese, which has promised him everlasting life, a promise his native God has never made to him. The closest his native spirituality ever offered him was to be with the ancestors. But they never offered him heaven, they never offered him milk and honey in the sky. When it was time for the Portuguese to leave once more, he realized, the two African companions realized that the third African companion that left and came back a new, different human being. His duty now was, he was appointed by the Portuguese to now remain in his homeland so he could teach and be an example to his fellow Africans in the new way of life, in the new exposed way of the living of the Portuguese people. And this individual spent the rest of his life condemning each and every aspect of the culture of his own people, while putting on a pedestal the ways, the culture, the teaching, the spirituality of the Portuguese. I relate this story to say one thing, to demonstrate how the human mind can be wiped clean of that indoctrination that was placed upon it over centuries or over decades, and a new indoctrination, a new teaching has been imposed upon the mind, giving birth to an occupied mind, giving birth to a colonial mind, giving birth to an occupied way of thinking and doing things. But when you speak to those of us who are colonized in the brain and in the mind, we have this tendency to believe that our ideas are all our ideas. That this truth that was being taught to us is an everlasting truth. There are no other truth outside of the truth that was bequeathed to us by the occupiers. And today, I am baffled at times when I sit back and listen, even sometimes to my own brethren, during a reasoning process, exposes nothing but the very concept of which they seek to condemn. Now we're going to take the process of Christianity. Here we are as a people who are introduced to Christianity. Those of us who are in this Western world that went through 400 years captive. That is the Christianity I'm going to speak about now. We were taught about a God and a religion that compels our obedience to our transgressors. I'm going to repeat that one more time. We were given and taught a religion that compelled our obedience to the very people who oppress us. And that process of indoctrination was imbued in us for more than 4 centuries. So when we come up now to the process and the enlightenment of Rastafari, let's never forget this is the mentality that we brought into the movement at different degrees. We brought a Christian doctrine, a Christian way of thinking in trying to process the new philosophy of Rastafari. So we're using an occupied brain, we're using a colonial brain in trying to understand the philosophy of Rastafari. We're talking about a philosophy and a doctrine that was brought into existence to destroy and do away with Christianity as an oppressive tool. Yet, this is the state of mind. You're talking about a conundrum, using a colonial mind to try to understand a conscious philosophy. Do you understand the process, the dichotomy that takes place between those two forces? It is like a fire trying to quench its thirst with a cup of water, and still trying and using the fire itself to sip from the cup of that water. But that's the struggle we had people with a colonial mind is caught up in. Now where am I going with this? Because each and every one of us brought a different level of consciousness in trying to overstand the philosophy of Rastafari. What we tend to do is try to, not really to sieve the issue out. Because to really sieve the issue out is to destroy your own Christian dumb mentality and imbue within your brain the new philosophy of Rastafari. It's not like you are using an empty brain and lacking ideas and concept and then trying to mold within that mind the new philosophy of Rastafari. No. We basically are going through the process where scripture talk about trying to pour new wines into old bottle. You see, if you have a new wine come off of the wine press, you just press the grape, ferment the grape, and you get the wine. If you take that wine and pour it into a bottle that had the old wine from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, all you're actually doing is contaminating the new wine with the evolutionary process of the old wine. You're going to taste the flavor, the benefit, you change everything. You cannot pour new wine into old wine bottle. So when we learn of Rastafari, or a lot of us learn of Rastafari, and we're trying to come to an understanding to liberate ourselves, within that process, human behavior teaches us one thing. Whatever we may do or say as an individual human being, we are in search of comfort. Not disturbance, we are in search of comfort. And by the mere fact that we are in search of comfort, you cannot seek comfort at the same time while seeking truth. Because if truth comes into conflict with your comfortability, with your ability to feel comfortable, the brain will choose comfort for most people over the truth. And I said all that to say this. When we bring a Christendom mind to the philosophy of Rastafari, and in that process, truth becomes subordinate to emotional comfort, then that is why you find a lot of Rastafari brethren mixing Rastafari philosophy with Christendom doctrine. And the reason why you see the varying and the various levels of this mixing within each individual is because each of these individuals finds their comfort level at a different place on the spectrum of comfortability. So you will meet a brethren or a sister, and that brethren and sister will say, all right, Selassie is God, and he's the second coming of Jesus. Alright. So what he does in that situation, alright, the brain is not comfortable with having a white man as Jesus, as the Messiah. But that individual believes in the second resurrection that he got from Christendom, and he's not willing to give up the doctrine of the second resurrection yet. But he's willing to give up the white Messiah. So what he does, he takes his majesty, Haile Selassie, as the black Messiah during the second resurrection that the Bible preaches. And said that man is Jesus now, today. And right there on that spectrum, he's comfortable. He's not looking at the contradiction that he's holding. He or she does not able to even see where the colonial mind has taken over the process of reasoning and accountability. They find their own comfort level during the reasoning process, and that's the furthest they are willing to go. So what you find today in the Rastafari movement, you have various houses of Rastafari and various individuals of Rastafari who propagate a doctrine of Christianity, but just replacing the white Messiah with a black Messiah. So everything where Jesus did say, him a come back, come do, Selassie come back, come do it. And everything where is to be done in the future by Jesus, Selassie going to do it in the future. So them really using the same old doctrine, slave doctrine. They just replace the color part. And then they go around and say them liberated because they replace. No man, I'm not liberation of that family. And that is not to degrade that little change that you make. Because that little change that you make is a substantial change for you based upon where your mental state is. And it shows that there is room for growth with an individual like that. So we're not knocking it. We just try to show you that is not a liberated man. That is a mind that is still imprisoned by a certain amount of emotional attachment to the doctrine of Christendom. Then we go to the next extreme now. You have a man who say, we have been beaten down for so long with this Christendom doctrine that he rejects everything within the doctrine. He rejects even scripture. He rejects all the things that he perceived to be of Christendom. And then he says, my mind is liberated because I reject Christendom doctrine. And he runs to the next extreme. But guess what? That's not liberation either. That is reactionaryism. Because most people that runs to the opposite extreme cannot reason out how they got to the opposite extreme. Them only did it out of rejection. So if the white man say white, them say black. If the white man say up, them say down. If the white man say left, them say right. History has shown us that a reactionary philosophical concept cannot liberate us either. You cannot just take an opposite point of view because the enemy or the perceived enemy is on the opposite side of the spectrum. That is not a thinking process. You just react. And them type of reaction, it not liberate the mind, it not liberate the spirit, and it not liberate the flesh. And how we know that it not liberate when you run to the opposite spectrum? When you run to the opposite spectrum, the man who you're running from, or the concept that you are running from, is what dictates the position that you run to, you know. So when you're dealing with human behavior, you have those who control the science where they can say, I'm going to do A and he's going to do B. So when you do B, you believe that you did B out of free will. No, you didn't do B out of free will. You did B as a response from a command base where the protagonist did A and predict that you would do B, and he wanted you to do B because to put you in a more vulnerable position to his manipulation. So just run into the extreme. Oh, the white man said there is a God, so me as a black man, I go say there is no God. No. If you cannot show me how you get through the reasoning process that there is no God, it don't mean I have to believe what you are saying. And it does not mean that you have to be correct. But it have to be sufficient where I can be able to follow the reasoning and not being able to detect any contradiction between two adjoining point of view. So when we be a reactionary and liberate us. Being a reactionary put you in a deeper, vulnerable, manipulative position to the wishes of the enemy. That is not a free mind either. So we understand that because we in this part of the world, this Western, and I go for Africa too. Because I don't believe because when you hear Africa, it means it is a colonial mind too. The mind that come out of 1884 after the Berlin Conference. The mind where you see existing in Africa today, by and large, come out of the 1884 Berlin Conference, when them divide up Africa and give each section of Africa to a different European metropolitan powers, and them come in and them indoctrinate the people. When we read that Chiba book will come out of Nigeria, things fall apart. That book just broke down the process of where the colonial mind in Africa come from. Now one other thing, because we're talking about development of the mind. One of the most fundamental things of having a free mind is able to develop a philosophy of life out of that free mind. No human being can properly govern themselves individually or collectively without having a philosophy of life. No. Every individual have a philosophy of life, you know. But it does not mean that every individual can articulate their philosophy of life. You see the man with a criminal mind, he have a philosophy of life too, you know. And film philosophy of life in a nutshell basically is, I go do what me want, take what me want, take it the way how me want take it, and no human being can tell me otherwise. I'm simple philosophy of life that, you know. Though he or she may not be able to articulate that philosophy of life. But they have a philosophy of life. But when we're speaking about a nation and a people and an individual that's trying to evolve into a new faculty, a higher state of thinking and consciousness, we need to engender a philosophy of life. Not only a philosophy of life that governs the present state of life of our people, but a philosophy of life that can anticipate the future. And one of my reasons when I always give the brethren that was that at some point in our Africanness in Africa, we literally lapsed in the process of philosophical development. And how we know that? Because when two individuals or two group of people meet for the first time, on an ideological level, it is two philosophy coming into clash for the first time, you know. Forget the flesh and blood that brings the philosophy. It is two different way of thinking that comes into contention with each other. So here we are in Africa. We have a certain philosophy of life. And even though there may not have been one unified philosophy of life throughout the entire African continent, there was certain similarity in the underpinning of our philosophy of life. And how do we know that? Because everywhere that the European, the Arabs, the Persians, the Greeks, everywhere they went in Africa for the last 2,500 years, whenever we encounter these people for the very first time, it was always from the position of being welcoming. So that was within our philosophy of life. Always welcome as strangers and make your house and food available to them. When these foreigners encountered Africans for the first time, they did not come with a blank state philosophically. They also brought their philosophy in this encounter. And one of the underpinning, one of the main philosophical positions within European philosophy of that time was that they are civilized and all other nations and people were uncivilized. The Africans never had that concept about the people because they're different. Difference? Yes. Inferiority? No. Primitive? No. Uncivilized? No. We never had that concept within our philosophy. But these foreign nations that came into Africa with these different philosophical concepts, and we're not looking into what is right and what is wrong. We are looking into whether or not the philosophy of life that we held to, if that philosophy was durable enough to withstand the blows of any oncoming enemy. And sad to say it was no. Our philosophy of life has shortcomings within it. And how we know it has shortcomings? Because millions and millions of us end up getting conquered and subdued and brought into slavery. Your philosophy fail you. Our philosophy fail us. That way of thinking fail us when we encounter a new people with a new philosophy, a new approach to life. That is what happened to us. Not because we did not have arms. Not because a lot of us could not read and write. Not because we did not have a certain level of civilization built out of steel to withstand the powers of the steel that we encounter from Europe. No, man. We know today that a man without a gun can defeat a man with a gun. Speaking practically through guerrilla warfare. You can take him one gun and defeat him. But if you do not have a philosophy of life that tells you that an unarmed man can defeat an armed man, speaking with material like steel, then if you lack that philosophy, you're going to lose that battle. That means that you have a control philosophy that maybe I tell you that you cannot defeat that. It's all a mental power we are indulging in a family. It's all mental concepts. If you as an individual believe in that, you can get up every day and no matter how life is hard, you can go out and struggle and make a life and take care of your wife and picnic. And you are going to do it because it can be done. The outcome of a man that think that way going to be radically different from the man who get up every day and say, boy, Babylon, no matter what me do or say, I'm not going to make it. So I'm going to just run off, left my woman and picnic. That's what I'm going to do. Because philosophy falls short of to deal with the circumstances in which he or she presently find themselves. If any obstacle looks unsurmountable to you, change the way how you look at it, and that obstacle will change. I'm going to repeat that. If any obstacle appears to be insurmountable to you, it is only because of the way how you are looking at it. If you change your perspective of that obstacle, the obstacle will change also. That's the power you must recognize within yourself of the brain and the mind. And you know why I do in life in growing up? I will encounter an obstacle. And upon immediately encounter it, it appears to be an obstacle. It may even appear to me to be insurmountable. And I always remind myself, listen, Gillie, please, just sit back and observe it. Sit back and observe it from all the different multiple angles that your brain power allow you to observe it. It's like when you're a little youth and you learn maths, you know. Usually for most of us at the first time it appears insurmountable. You can't solve this math problem. And either when the teacher show it to you, the answer, or your friends show you how to get the answer, or you buckle within your own wisdom and get the answer, you see the moment the answer hits you and you see how it is arrived at, you feel a sense of euphoria and you realize you was looking at it differently. And by you now being able to look at that problem from a different angle, you smile to yourself and say, well, it wasn't an obstacle, man. I was the obstacle. Not that thing out there. I am the obstacle to whatever I encounter that is a struggle to me. And that is why Rastafari has to take a position where we are not in search of reactionary position. And we are not in search of any comfortability mentally to try and that will give us the process of trying to merge the philosophy of Rastafari to Christendom or to Islam or to another foreign religion. No. What we must strive for is getting from A to B through a reasoning process and arrive at an enlightened position and a higher level of conscious development. That is where we strive for. So when I reason with anyone, brethren or sister, and I look at how they are developing their reasoning and to arrive at a certain point, I don't look for whether I agree with them or I don't agree with them. You know. That is inconsequential to me. I don't care about agreeing with you or I don't agree with you. What I care about is to see how you connect your points at a rational point where I can say, okay, I can see how your reasoning went from A to B to C. That's what I look for in reasoning. And if I detect in that reasoning where you're telling me you went from A to B and I can't see the connection, I guess so the reasoning where I need some clarity. Because I'm going to point it out to you. Say, I don't show you get from A to B, you know. So try your best to show it to me again. And then there are times in the reason where I say, okay, you know what, brethren and sister, I don't see you get from A to B, you know. But I'm going to hold that jump that you make, and I go and allow to go from C to D. You already falter from A to B, But that does not mean the reasoning has to be back down at that point. Because that's what most brethren do in a reason, You reach one point and stuck and you spend all day at that one point dragging out. No. Part of reasonability is like what we say in Jamaica, stick a point. And you stick the point, mean, alright, go on, I not get that part clear, but I go hold it in my wisdom, I'll get back to you. Show me how you get from C to D, Even though there's a break in the chain of your philosophical process where you try to reason with me. A philosophical doctrine is central to the development of a people. A philosophical doctrine, and I'll get to the Rastafari part right now, is not only essential, but it has to be practical. We do not want to get caught up in a philosophical debate like what Christianity got caught up in the 16th century, asking about how many angels can dance on the head of a needle or on the head of a pin. We're not going to waste time on something like that. We're not going to waste time on something like that. It does not mean you cannot reason upon that, But the situation that we find ourselves in as a people now is more urgent than trying to figure out how much angel can dance on the head of a pin. So we need something more practical. We need philosophical trashing out of the nascent ideas within the Rastafari movement. What do I mean by that? There are hundreds, if not thousands, of disjointed Rastafari philosophies or philosophical point of views that are out there. We hear the brothers and sisters and repeat every day. We hear them repeat it every day. But we need the academic brain power to bring those philosophical points of views together where we can lay out the consistency of how all these different, what appear to be disjointed philosophical opinions, where we can join them together. Not just recording them and put them between two covers and say, read this. No. We have to go beyond that. We have to show the consistency and the logical sequence of these philosophical ideas and how they can take us into the future. Brethren and sisters, we must take control of our brain. Stop allowing people within the community to lead us down a point of trying to seek comfortability, trying to be comfortable in our mind instead of seeking that philosophical concept that can liberate us. Every man seek comfort, but it's few can set aside that comfortability and deal with truth. Can you think of anything that you do in your entire life, over the entire span of your lifetime, that you wasn't seeking comfortability? Even when you walk, you try to walk comfortable. You sleep, you try to sleep comfortable. You eat, you try to eat comfortable. You drink, you try to drink. And any discomfort that invades that process discombobulate the mind. And it make you pull up and say, well, man, I have to find a different way to eat that food here, or drink that juice here, or walk in other shoes here, or sing that song here. But the mind that is able to change this earth is the mind that can set aside comfortability and strive after that philosophical doctrine that is necessary to liberate us without any apology. And this is true liberation lay. And this is where we are going to find true liberation. Can you see? Ideas come first, and then emotions get attached to these ideas. And then this emotion that is attached to these ideas make you act a certain way. So what do I mean by that? Remember, I begin by seeking comfort in my thinking process. So I want the brain is not going to allow me to think in an uncomfortable way and to live with it, even if it is truth. So the example I give you is Christendom planted in my cranium from little youth, right? That's an example I go draw. And me come and me hear a Rastaman I preach Rastafari. Me automatically start measure up when I preach to when in my brain when I think about Christianity, you know. And if me hear him say anything, we start pop down the door of Christianity in my brain too much, me I go reject it and condemn him and push him. Say you're the devil, and the devil send you. You come talk about the resurrection is a lie and Jesus is a lie. There's no heaven. I already know it's heaven in the sky. You don't want to hear that. But if me hear you come with a similar doctrine and you tweak it a little bit, I say, you know what? That kind of close, you know. It sounds like me can work with that. So when you say, even though in my teachings of Christendom, Jesus white, and all of ancient Israel was white, and I believe that. So here you come and tell me about ancient Israel was black. And I read a little book and I say, yeah, but no white man never in another region. Alright, the brain can accept that. So I take them two philosophies and try and mix it and blend it. It doesn't have no consistency to the texture of the reasoning, but that's where I find comfort. So I take that mix up doctrine in my head now and then, so I get emotionally attached to that now, meaning I believe it. When I become emotionally attached to an idea, it means you believe that idea. So I just clarify what emotional attachment means for those who don't. Emotionally attached to a concept is that you basically believe in that idea. And when you believe in an idea now, that is the idea that you are going to act upon. That means when I go teach a virgin now about Rastafari, because at this so me find comfortability in my mind by mixing the two philosophies together. When I go teach a young boy about Rastafari, I see a mix of discombobulated mind process and I go teach you out. Because I don't know, say, I just comfortability me look for in my mind, you know. I think of the truth me arrive at. So when I teach it to the youth, I'm not taking to process the youth comfortability. I teach him my comfortability doctrine to him know as truth. And if he not take it and bite, then I call him an idiot. So what you find at developing of the Rastafari movement throughout the world now is that there's a million different ideas out there being taught. And these millions of different ideas. And one aspect of the doctrine, you have a million different perspectives, you know. And the reason why you have this million different perspectives because there's a million different comfortability within a million different individuals. And this is one of the reasons why when you go up on different Rastafari camp, if you go up on 10 different camps, you hear 10 different doctrines. I'm not getting to whether them right or wrong. What I try to tell you is that you're going, those 10 different doctrines coming from 10 different mental comfort level of the individual who is teaching the doctrine. So more time when I go to Rasta reasoning and sitting and I listen, I can listen to sometimes how the virgin them bring across them reasoning and can tell how much them brain is preoccupied with the Asian colonial doctrine. You know. But I don't tell them that. I look for the part of the reason where I see. But the difference between me and a lot of brethren is I recognize the power of the brain to see comfort. So because me have the ability and developed up over years, I find great discomfort in comfortability. I don't like being comfortable. So if I read a book, and everything when I read in the book, I find myself I agree with, I can't wait for done the book and dash it down. I want a book where going to challenge the comfort state of mind of the doctrine when I uphold to. I don't want to read no book Where everything when me read in the book, me I say to myself, yes, me agree with this. Yes, me agree with this. Yes, nah man. Man fi strive beyond seeking just comfort. I want to read a book, and when me read it, my first instinct in reading it is to put a fire upon it. And when I read a book and I get that emotional reaction for fire down the book, at the moment I want to read the book. Because I love that state of where the scripture talk about indecision. I love going at the valley of indecision. I love my ideas and my belief system to be challenged. And when me go up in another concept where I challenge my mental state of comfortability, I sit down and I meditate on that power and force of that doctrine to get me uncomfortable. And you know, say that's the only time the brain learns something. You know, say the brain never learn nothing when it's comfortable. How can the brain learn anything where everything where you read that way you already agree with? What new development is there for the brain and the mind where everything you read or hear you agree with? Nah, man. The brain is an organ of contradictions. You'd have figured say the brain will go and develop when it hear things where it agree with. Because things that it hear that it agree with, it is more welcoming to the brain and the mind. But funny thing, that's not how the brain learn. That's not how the brain expand. Whether biologically or conceptually. For this thing to expand, it have to be challenged. And the challenge have to bring about changes. Not just challenge to be challenged, but it have to lead to change. It have to lead to when you can get up tomorrow and say, me not believe in that whole idea there again. And me never adapt, I mean not adapt a new idea because a man tell me if you adapt a new idea. But me apply the power of reasoning and logical sequential development in the thinking process. And say, yes, that thought that when me hold upon yesterday. Me easy from that now. I saw me ago. Them type of reason that bust up enough man brain in my youth. Make man take water break, man. Hold up priest, man go drink some water. Because them things there, gonna come like you try to give me a headache. But at them time that the brain learn. At them time that the brain expand. When you feel like a cranium go bust off. When you feel try hold 6 different giant concepts in the brain and I listen for the 7th one. Because in order to understand the 7th one that coming, you have to hold the 6 in your brain. You have to hold the 6 in your brain. So this Rastafari philosophy of life, I forget delve into it, I forget trash out. And who get left back. The movement have to rise up out of this comfortability but we are seek on an individual level because of this of our mental state there. At this our mental state there. We have to go into and come out a reason, you have to scratch your head and say, I hear my Jaja. A reasoning there. You know, if you left out of the reason agreeing with it, you know, or disagreeing with it, you know. But you want to leave out of every philosophical reasoning. And you have to say to yourself, I have to go back and meditate on this. I have to go meditate on this. And what you're going to realize in your own individual meditation or around the reasoning table is that the more you hear something contrary to what you already believe, and the more your brain going to tell you, shut down that type of reasoning. But that is the time when you should resist it. When you should resist shutting it down. And say to yourself, I'm going to listen it out, man. Even whether I'm going to agree with it now, or agree with it later, or disagree with it now, and disagree with it later. And that's the thing there. And once we as a people we come to free up the Africanness of our state of existence. You can't claim say you come and why in this movement where it's about freedom and liberation of the mind, first and foremost. And yet you're free to make your concept stand up, withstand scrutiny. I wish God you serve. You serve the God of enlightenment, and you serve the God of comfortability. Make up your mind, man. You must develop a state of mind when the drum start beat a certain way. And that discomfort they start come down upon you. And the more you feel able to tell yourself, I'm not running from it, you know. I'm going to hear it out. I'm going to reason to the best of my ability against it. I'm going to listen to the powers and forces and the utterances where come against my comfortability. I'm going to ask myself within the reason, am I struggling to maintain comfortability? Is that why I reject the reason, or am I rejecting the reason because it is not rationally developed yet to the point where I can accept it? Don't forget, when you're going at the ruling powers of the earth today, them nations, they imply think tank, and you have civil people who establish think tank just to think on certain ideas, And that is the reason why within the university, speaking academically, within the universities, fear throughout the world. That is why you are required to write a thesis at the end of your studies, or a capstone at the end of your studies. You know why? Because those theses and capstone require you to develop a new philosophical approach to a given situation, and then government file it away. You remember when America did go invade Iraq, and them claim say them have evidence that Saddam Hussein go buy uranium from Niger or Chad in Africa. You know where them claim and get it from? It was a British university student that wrote a thesis that was stored in the university in England. And because it was digitized, you see, I want to with them people, The reason why they make every university graduate student have to write a thesis and a capstone, and it has to come from an original approach, is so that ideas can be gotten written down from different perspectives. So when government ready, them going at the archive of all of the great European universities and say, bring me a document of all the authors who has ever written on this particular subject. Our government now every time they sit down and come up with 100 ways to look at one problem. But they know the European universities has turned out enough students, and because they require a thesis and a capstone, they know they can find 300, 400, 500 students that has written on the very same one topic. And government just take it and computerize and look at all of them and try to come up with an answer to solve their issue. That's where we're there. That's why the Rastafari philosophical movement, the philosophy of Rastafari has to get more congealed. It has to get more concrete. It has to get more practical. And that way the movement will move forward, because we shall have a philosophical base that's not disjointed. That which philosophy of life that which we will be able to consult, not only physically but academically. So that the movement can move towards that process which it seeks, which is total liberation of our people. So, brethren and sisters, from my perspective, it was a good reasoning. This is Gillie Priest of Gillie Priest Revolutionary Radio. So, until next time, one God, one aim, one destiny, peace, love, and unity. Honors and mothers, brethren and sisters. Peace out.